Chapter 391. When Jiang Huan came, Gu Xingyin was a little surprised, but she still ordered someone to invite him over. She went to change her clothes. "Xian, why are you looking for me?" Gu Xingyin asked. Jiang Huan came to find Fu Yunjin on the spur of the moment. What could he say to her? Say that he saw Shuhe being intimate with someone in the imperial garden? Even if the two of them had a good relationship, it would be hurtful to say such words. Jiang Huan smiled. "I came out of the palace and happened to pass by your residence, so I came in to take a look." Gu Xingyin thought that this was not the same as leaving the city, but she did not say anything. Jiang Huan, on the other hand, was very uneasy. He had a knot in his heart when he heard Fu Yunjin's drunken words, but he was not sure what his good friend was thinking. After all, many people felt that marrying a princess was an honor, even if the princess was not like an ordinary wife. He hesitated for a long time, but still asked, "Yunjin, what do you think of the marriage between Princess Shuhe and he?" Gu Xingyin's expression changed subtly, and she smiled. Why did Xian suddenly think of this? Jiang Huan looked at her carefully, and did not miss the unnatural expression that flashed across her face when she heard his words. "Last night, I heard Yunjin's drunken words, and I have some doubts." He simply went straight to the point. Gu Xingyin's expression changed. She looked at Jiang Huan and saw his serious expression. She knew that there was no way to fool him, and she could not help but smile bitterly. "You heard what I said. Princess Shuhe came to me personally and said that she does not like me, and wants me to cancel the marriage." Gu Xingyin said lightly. "I have no interest in the princess, but this marriage itself is the grace of the emperor. How can it be cancelled just because I am unwilling?" Jiang Huan could not explain what he felt in his heart. When he heard that the other party had no interest in the princess, there was a flash of secret joy in his heart. He looked at Gu Xingyin. "What if I can persuade imperial brother to cancel this marriage? Is Yunjin willing to give up this glory that ordinary people can't even dream of?" Gu Xingyin glanced at him. "Don't let the world rest in peace. Do you think I, Fu Yunjin, am that kind of person who covets riches and honor? Not to mention." She had a proud look on her face. "The glory that I, Fu Yunjin, want, I have to rely on my own blade and sword to fight for it on the battlefield. I don't care for things that are obtained by relying on my status as a wife." Jiang Huan smiled. "That's the Fu Yunjin I know. Don't worry, I'll settle this for you." Gu Xingyin shook her head. "There's no need to trouble Xian. I'll settle this myself. Since Princess Shu he doesn't like me, I, Fu Yunjin, am not willing to warm my face and stick to the cold bench." What a joke, her goal was not just to cancel this marriage. She still remembered the assassination attempt at the city gate. If Princess Shu he wanted to let it go so easily, she would have to see if she agreed. Jiang Huan frowned. He felt that this matter was not easy to solve. It would be better for him to step in. But when he saw Gu Xingyin's determined expression, he swallowed his words. Since Yunjin insisted, he would let him be. If it really did not work out, he would go and beg imperial brother. Gu Xingyin acted quickly. No one knew where it started, but a rumor slowly spread. The capital's pearl, Princess Shu He, had an affair with the Zhuge Duke's heir. Chapter 392. If it was purely a close relationship, with one being the beautiful princess and the other being the famous prince of the capital, everyone would probably just laugh it off. However, one of the main characters, Princess Shu He, had an engagement with General Fu Yunjin. The Fu family's reputation in the Tianyun dynasty was not lower than any other aristocratic family. Many people didn't even know who the current prime minister was or how many dukes there were, but they knew that the Fu family was the war god of the Tianyun dynasty. The Fu family had fought off countless foreign enemies for the Tianyun dynasty. Generation after generation, the Fu family had used countless amounts of blood in exchange for glory. It was an achievement that no one could erase. This kind of rumor about Fu Yunjin and Princess Shu He was naturally spread by countless people. Originally, if it was really just a rumor, Princess Shu He and Fang Mingyu wouldn't have cared, because those who really cared would have investigated it. Rumors couldn't be investigated. However, it just so happened that the things mentioned in the rumor had actually happened. The tryst in Ming Yuan Temple, the silk handkerchief and knot that Princess Shu He had secretly embroidered for Fang Mingyu, the jade pendant hanging from Fang Mingyu's waist, all of these things were true. Princess Shu He panicked. She couldn't have imagined that these things, which were clearly very secretive, would be dug up by others. Of course, this was due to the system. When the rumor became more and more intense, it was impossible for the person sitting at the top to pretend not to know. Princess Shu He was summoned by the emperor. But Gu Xingyin knew that this wasn't enough. As expected, no one knew what Princess Shu He and the emperor talked about. But the rumors in the capital suddenly disappeared overnight. Princess Shu He also didn't appear in the palace for a long time, but the general's residence still hadn't received the imperial edict to cancel the marriage. Gu Xingyin received many treasures from the palace. The emperor's meaning was clear. This was the imperial family's compensation to the Fu family, but the marriage would still go on as before. Gu Xingyin pinched a pearl the size of a finger and looked at it carefully. She said carelessly, "This emperor is really generous. Even the palace treasury doesn't have many pearls of this quality." She said that it was precious, but the expression on her face was somewhat disapproving. Whenever Gu Xingyin went out these few days, she would always encounter some pitiful gazes. Gu Xingyin did not need to look to know what those gazes meant. She was just pitying him. He wasn't even married yet, but he was already wearing such a big green hat on his head. Moreover, that hat couldn't be removed. The more Gu Xingyin pretended to be indifferent on the surface, the more others thought that he was just pretending to be calm. Who knew how sad he was in private? After all, in all these years, no one had ever heard of any rumors about General Fu being a womanizer, nor had they heard of him having any female confidants. Most people thought that he respected and loved his fiancée, Princess Shu He. They never thought that he would encounter such a situation. Even the emperor specially summoned him to speak for a while. "Yunjin, I know that this matter has wronged you. I promise that this kind of thing won't happen again. I have already fiercely ordered Shu He to reflect. She has always been respectful and careful. It is normal for her to be blinded by others." In one sentence, he removed Princess Shu He from the picture and pushed all the blame onto the Zhu Guoshizhi. Chapter 393. That unlucky Zhu Guoshizhi probably would not be able to gain the emperor's favor in this lifetime. However, he was not wronged. This kind of thing could not be done unilaterally. The more others felt wronged, the happier Gu Xingyin was. This was good. She wanted everyone to be on her side and feel that Princess Shuha had wronged her. The emperor did not think much of it now. It was fine. She still had a backup plan. As long as Shuha's impression in his heart worsened, Gu Xingyin would not have to worry about whether he would cancel their marriage in the end. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. During this time, the border was stable. Gu Xingyin only needed to go to court every day. She was very idle. However, the emperor was probably anxious and wanted to settle the matter quickly. He directly sent an imperial edict to the Zhuguo manor. "The wedding will be held on the 10th of next month." Gu Xingyin was shocked. She did not expect the emperor to be so anxious. In this dynasty, there had never been a princess's wedding that was only a month apart from the date of the imperial edict. She thought there would be at least half a year. It seemed that some of the plans that had been set before could be brought forward. However, she had not acted yet. Someone was even more anxious than her. "I heard that Imperial Brother's imperial edict has been issued. He wants you and Shuha to be married next month." Jiang Huan's expression was not good. Gu Xingyin nodded. Jiang Huan looked at her calm expression and was a bit annoyed. "Previously, I said that I could help you. You said that you could solve it yourself. Now, even the date has been set. Gu Xingyin looked at him with some surprise. She smiled and said, why is Xian more anxious than me? Logically speaking, I should be the one who is angry. Jiang Huan was speechless. Yes, why was he so anxious? He thought back to himself. When he learned that Imperial Brother had issued the Imperial Edict, he almost could not sit still. Without stopping, he ordered the carriage driver to rush to the general's manor. Where was the indifferent demeanor? But why? He asked himself, if it were someone else, if it were another friend, would he be so anxious? The answer was no. If it were someone else, he could still sit there calmly and think about how to solve the problem, instead of running over to see how Fu Yunjin was doing like a hothead. Jiang Huan didn't dare to think about what was hidden within. Fortunately, Gu Xingyin was just teasing him and did not force him to answer. She looked at Jiang Huan with a determined expression. Sure, and every fist is my heart. Yunjin appreciates your kindness. Don't worry, I have my ways to resolve this matter. Her expression was so calm that Jiang Huan couldn't doubt the authenticity of her words. Jiang Huan looked at Gu Xingyin and did his best to resist the urge to immediately go to the palace and ask his imperial brother to retract the order. He nodded. He had to believe in Yunjin. Gu Xingyin's plan was very simple and crude. She was going to plan an assassination and then follow the clues to connect this group of assassins with the group of people at the city gate. As long as she was willing, there were countless ways for the emperor to find the mastermind. This way, she did not believe that the emperor would have the face to let Princess Shuha marry her. A princess could have a bad relationship with the prince consort, but if a princess wanted to murder an important official in court, the crime would be serious. Needless to say, although the Tianyun dynasty was a large country, the tribes of the surrounding countries had never stopped harassing the border. In the emperor's heart, it was still unknown whether one of his many daughters, the princess, or her, the little war god, was more important. Chapter 394. However, Gu Xingyin didn't have time to act before the system informed her of an important matter. Is what you said true? I really didn't expect that this Princess Shu he would also have such a naive moment. Gu Xingyin exclaimed to the system. The system just told her that Princess Shu he had just been released from her confinement and thought of a way to contact the heir of Zhuge Manor, Fang Mingyu. The two of them planned to elope. Gu Xingyin could still somewhat understand Princess Shu he's actions, but Fang Mingyu? He's willing to give up his status and identity to elope with Shu he? Could it be that his feelings were so deep that he didn't care about anything else? The answer really was yes. Gu Xingyin only felt that since Princess Shu he had put in so much effort to help her, it would be a pity if she didn't help them out. 3 days later, it was the birthday of the old princess consort of Jingan. The old princess consort's seniority was quite high, so even the emperor in the palace sent down a decree to bestow a generous gift. Princess Shu he, who had been confined for several months, also dressed up and came to the prince's estate. However, she had already discovered that she was no longer the focus of the crowd. Many noble ladies were looking at her with special gazes. She knew why. Right now, her reputation in the capital's upper-class circle was probably extremely bad. This was all thanks to him. Princess Shu he thought of the figure she faintly saw talking and laughing across the flower pond. He was dressed in white robes and had a jade belt, unbridled and unrestrained. If it wasn't for Fu Yunjin, she and her cousin could be together in a legitimate manner. Even if they were discovered, Imperial Father might still be able to bestow a marriage. But now, she had just been released from confinement and her cousin was also harshly punished by the Zhuge Manor. Both of their reputations were ruined. Only this Fu Yunjin was still the General Fu that everyone respected. Why? Princess Shu he's hand was currently pinching a flower. She unconsciously used all her strength, causing the bright petals to shatter in her hand. The dark red flower juice stained her hand, but she didn't care at all. It doesn't matter. Princess Shu He comforted herself. It was better if no one paid attention to her. It would be easier to carry out her plan later. Gu Xingyin exchanged pleasantries with various familiar and unfamiliar people, but in his mind, he had the system pay attention to Princess Shu He's movements. Jiang Huan, who had been by her side, noticed her absent-mindedness and asked her what was wrong. Gu Xingyin pretended to be deep in thought and replied, I don't know why, but I have a bad premonition in my heart today. She was just joking, but Jiang Huan took it seriously. He quickly took her hand and asked, Are you not feeling well? Do you want an imperial physician to come and take a look? Gu Xingyin let him hold her hand. She didn't care if it was strange for two men to hold each other like this. She smiled and said, I lied to you. She slyly leaned over to Jiang Huan's ear and whispered, I just don't have the patience to chat with those bureaucratic people. She was half leaning on him, and her warm breath hit him. Jiang Huan subconsciously had the impulse to raise his hand and embrace this warmth. He pressed down his restless hand and said gently, I know you don't have the patience for these twists and turns. Bear with it. When the banquet is over, we will find an excuse to leave. His tone was full of indulgence and pampering. His Highness Prince Rong and General Fu's relationship is really good. In the distance, two noble ladies looked at the two figures together. One of them sighed. The other replied, Yes, I originally thought it was just a rumor. But the two of them like this, no matter how she looked at it, it felt a bit strange. She put her doubts in the bottom of her heart. Chapter 395. The banquet quickly came to an end. Jiang Huan remembered what he said earlier and came to find Gu Xingyin. I just told Prince Jingan that we have some matters to attend to, so we have to leave first. At this time, the system also sent a notification, Host, Princess Shu He's carriage has already been prepared at the left gate of the residence. The heavens are helping me. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. Jiang Huan's carriage just so happened to be at the left gate. The two of them walked out of the residence. At this time, there were many carriages of high officials and nobles parked outside the residence. All of them had servants guarding them, but because there were too many people, it was a bit messy. It was likely that Princess Shu He and the others had seen through this and were preparing to leave quietly while there were many people watching. Gu Xingyin slowly walked and quickly locked onto Princess Shu He's position. If it wasn't for the system's notification, she wouldn't have discovered that this woman with a sallow complexion and coarse clothing was actually Princess Shu He, who was famous for her beauty in the capital. Coincidentally, the carriage she prepared was also an ordinary-looking carriage with blue curtains, but from the outside, it was 80% similar to Jiang Huan's carriage. Gu Xingyin suddenly stopped in her tracks and said to Jiang Huan, I heard that Princess Consort Jingan loves flowers and that there are more exotic flowers and plants in the rear garden than in the imperial garden. There's even a stalk of Indian orchid that's the only stalk in Tianyun dynasty. I actually forgot to take a look earlier. Jiang Huan's interest was piqued. There's such a thing. Gu Xingyin laughed inwardly. Then why don't we go take a look? She pretended to inadvertently call out to Princess Shu He, who was about to get on the carriage, You're a servant of the Prince of Jing'an's residence. Do you know where the Indian orchid is located in the residence? If it's convenient, can you take us there to take a look? Princess Shu He froze in place. She never expected that just as she was about to succeed, she would meet the person she didn't want to meet the most. Her mind raced, but on the surface, she only slightly lowered her head and said in a low voice, replying to Darren, This servant is only a woman who does rough work. This time, this servant was commissioned by the master to go buy some ingredients and doesn't know where the Indian orchid is. Oh, Gu Xingyin replied. Princess Shu He heaved a sigh of relief and was about to leave when she heard Gu Xingyin say with certainty, You're lying. Princess Shu He's heart skipped a beat. As expected, Gu Xingyin continued, You said that you are only a servant who does rough work. I see that your clothes are indeed unsightly, but your hands are fair and delicate. These are not the hands that a servant who does rough work should have. Moreover, You say that you're just a rough woman, but I can see that you're very dignified, so you're lying. You couldn't be one of the head maidservants of Prince Jing An's estate, and you secretly stole money from your master and ran away, right? Princess Shu He's heart was in her throat. She was thinking about how to deal with it when a gentle voice came from the carriage. She's just a servant. General Fu, don't bother with her. It was Fang Mingyu. Gu Xingyin looked at the man who came forward to help Princess Shu He out of her predicament. He was indeed a man of striking appearance. She could see that he had deep feelings for Princess Shu He. However, these two feelings were too deep. Had anyone considered Fu Yunjin's feelings? She snorted, Fang. She glanced at Jiang Huan from the corner of her eye and discovered that the other party's gaze was on Princess Shu He, who was pretending to be a servant. His brows were deeply furrowed. This meant that he was suspicious of Princess Shu He's identity. Chapter 396. Gu Xingyin calmed down and glanced at Princess Shu He carelessly. All right, since Fang Shizi has spoken, this general will give Fang Shizi face. She turned around and pretended to leave, but Jiang Huan grabbed her arm. Jiang Huan's gaze was fixed on Princess Shu He as he said, "Come here." Princess Shu He's originally relaxed heart instantly jumped. Judging from Imperial Uncle Rong's tone, it was highly likely that he had discovered her identity. She quickly raised her head and met Fang Mingyu's eyes. The two of them saw the same message in each other's eyes, run. Princess Shu He didn't say anything else and walked towards the carriage. Fang Mingyu leaned forward and pulled her up. The coachman, who was already prepared, cracked his whip and the carriage headed towards the city gate. Guards! Stop them for me. Jiang Huan's face was as calm as water. Gu Xingyin seemed to have just realized what had happened. She looked at Jiang Huan with a trace of disbelief in her voice. That person just now was, Jiang Huan couldn't bear it, but he still looked at her and said word by word, it was Shu He. Gu Xingyin's expression changed from shock to ashen. How could she not understand what had happened? Her own fiancé had eloped with someone else. This kind of humiliation was simply unbearable. She didn't want to look in the direction Fang Mingyu and Shu He had left. She only said in a hoarse voice, I want to enter the palace. Jiang Huan knew what she wanted to do and said warmly, I'll go with you. The two of them weren't worried about Princess Shu He at all. If the two of them really escaped right under their noses, then the imperial guards and guards in the capital could collectively commit suicide. Gu Xingyin entered the palace but didn't directly see the emperor. Instead, she knelt down outside the imperial study. Jiang Huan's heart ached when he saw this, but he also knew that this was the only way to let the emperor know his determination. He glanced at Gu Xingyin and entered the imperial study himself. What's wrong? You've been entering the palace quite frequently recently. The emperor looked at Jiang Huan with some surprise. Jiang Huan and Gu Xingyin entered the palace at the first possible moment. News from Prince Jing'an's estate had yet to arrive. Jiang Huan was not in the mood to exchange pleasantries and said directly, Brother, Yunjin is kneeling outside the imperial study. The emperor was shocked. What's wrong? What happened? Let him in. Jiang Huan just shook his head. Listen to me first. He recounted everything that had happened just now without missing a single word. At the end, he added, in my opinion, Shu He and that Fang Mingyu, I'm afraid that they want to escape. Pa! The emperor swept the inkstone off the desk. This evil creature. The emperor said to Jiang Huan, go outside and tell Yunzhen to come in and report. Jiang Huan shook his head. I'm afraid I won't be able to persuade him this time. This is too humiliating for a man. Yunzhen is asking for your opinion. The emperor laughed angrily. What? Is he threatening me? But he thought about it again. Generals were mostly hot-blooded. When encountering such a situation, it was normal for them to express their dissatisfaction. If Fu Yunjin came to greet him as if nothing had happened, then his shrewdness would truly be frightening. With such a thing happening, even if he wanted to make Shuha and him a couple, it was probably impossible. The emperor's mind spun and he finally let out a long sigh. I've agreed to what he wants. Let him in. Chapter 397. When Gu Xingyin saw Jiang Huan's expression, she knew what the result would be. Sure enough, Jiang Huan walked to her side and stretched out his hand. Get up, go to the imperial study and ask for forgiveness. Gu Xingyin stood up with the strength of his hand and walked to the imperial study. She knelt down in front of the emperor standing there. This subject is guilty. The emperor snorted. You still know that you are guilty? How dare you threaten me? Gu Xingyin smiled. This subject also knows that your majesty loves this subject, so I dare to be so rebellious. Okay. The emperor waved his hand. I know, I am sorry about the matter of Shuha. How about I see if there are any princesses of suitable age in the imperial family and compensate you with a gentle and virtuous wife? Gu Xingyin hurriedly waved her hand. Thank your majesty for your kindness, but this subject really doesn't have such thoughts now. This subject can't accept your majesty's kindness. If the emperor really bestowed another marriage, wouldn't her efforts be in vain? The emperor was just joking, but being rejected by a subject, he still felt uncomfortable. He glared, don't show up in front of me, quickly get out. So, Gu Xingyin quickly got out, and took His Highness Prince Rong with her. Jiang Huan looked at the relaxed Gu Xingyin, who didn't seem to be affected by the matter of Princess Shuha at all. Gu Xingyin replied in a good mood, I didn't like her in the first place. They did such a shameless thing, the one who ruined their reputation is not me. She looked at Jiang Huan with bright eyes. Why should a man worry about not having a wife? Sighing is just a woman's pretense. Fu Yunjin, disdain it. When she said this, her eyes were brighter than the stars in the sky, making people unconsciously believe in her words. Jiang Huan's eyes were soft. Yes, Yunjin is so outstanding, I don't know how many young ladies from aristocratic families dream of having him. When he said this, he couldn't help but feel sour in his heart. There were so many people who could openly admire him, but he was the only one who couldn't. Wait, why do I have such thoughts? Jiang Huan was shocked. He looked at Gu Xingyin, who was smiling brightly, and the bewilderment in his heart grew. Was she actually harboring such thoughts towards Yunjin? The more Jiang Huan thought about it, the more bitter he felt. Men falling in love was going against the order of the heavens in the end, and they would suffer the curses of the world. So how could he bear to drag Yunjin into such a quagmire? Jiang Huan wished that he would never realize what kind of feelings he had for Yunjin. That way, he would be able to stay by Yunjin's side. Be careful. Gu Xingyin's words pulled his attention back. The carriage shook heavily. At the same time, a pair of hands held him firmly. What's going on? Jiang Huan regained his senses and asked the coachman outside. Your Highness, there's an assassin. Please don't come out. The coachman's muffled voice sounded. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. This was the move that he had planted. She held Jiang Huan and got up. I'll go out and take a look. You stay inside and don't move. Jiang Huan subconsciously stopped her. Gu Xingyin smiled proudly. Xian, don't forget who I am. In this world, the person who can take my life by force has not appeared yet. After saying this, she turned over and got out of the carriage. She knocked out an assassin and removed the weapon in his hand. A group of rascals who don't know what's good for them. Chapter 398. Jiang Huan sat in the carriage, his heart filled with worry. However, he knew his own situation and did not rashly get down. Not long after, the sounds of fighting outside stopped. Gu Xingyin lifted the curtain and sat back in her clean clothes. Are you all right? Jiang Huan asked nervously. Gu Xingyin shook her head. It's just a group of motley crew. A few of them have been caught by your coachman and are going to be sent to the Supreme Court later. She lowered her eyes and hid the look in her eyes. These people were all fugitives that she had paid a great price to find. She had promised them that she would protect their wives and children for a lifetime of prosperity and safety, but the price was their lives. When they arrived at the Supreme Court, these people would reveal some information according to what she said. By the time the Supreme Court investigated, they would naturally be able to use some clues to link this assassination to the previous one. Gu Xingyin did not deny that her move was somewhat shady, but the truth was that if you were merciful, others would want your life. Jiang Huan saw that her mood was not right and thought that it was because she was in a bad mood, so he did not think much of it. As Gu Xingyin had expected, this assassination attempt actually involved Prince Rong. Jin Xingyin flew into a rage and personally ordered the Supreme Court to investigate thoroughly. When the officials of the Supreme Court received the imperial edict, they naturally did not dare to be negligent. Each of them took out 120% of their experience and treated it carefully. In addition, Gu Xingyin had already prepared the evidence. When the officials found out the truth, their hearts turned cold. Lord Zhang, this. The deputy of the Supreme Court stood at attention and looked at his superior with a face full of sweat. Since a princess was involved in this matter, they had no way to make the decision. Moreover, in this kind of situation, it was possible that His Majesty would silence the insiders to protect Princess Xu He. Lord Zhang of the Supreme Court had been in the officialdom for many years and was much calmer than Li Zheng. This matter, other than you and me, no one else is allowed to know. Now, follow me to the palace to see His Majesty. Yes. On the other side, when the emperor heard that the matter had been investigated, he immediately summoned the officials of the Supreme Court. This is the result of your investigation. The emperor looked at the two of them coldly. Lord Zhang's expression remained unchanged as he replied, reporting to your Majesty, this matter is highly confidential. Lord Li and I have done everything personally, and the results will be reported to your Majesty as soon as possible. As for whether it is true or false, I hope your Majesty can decide. He left the choice to the emperor. What he meant was that this matter was not revealed to the public. Only the two of them knew about it. Even if they were given 100 guts, they would not dare to reveal anything. As for the truth, it depends on your Majesty. Whatever truth you want, it will be whatever truth you want. The emperor looked at the two people kneeling at the foot of the steps for a long time. Killing intent flashed in his eyes, but he finally calmed down. Get up. You don't have to worry about this matter anymore. I will naturally give the general and Prince Rong an explanation. The two of them took their leave in relief. Once they were out of the door, Li Zhenkai bowed respectfully to his superior. Your Excellency is quick-witted. This humble official admires you. Lord Zhang stroked his goatee with a smile and said nothing. The emperor entered Princess Xu He's palace with a heavy expression. Ever since Princess Xu He was caught eloping, she had been placed under house arrest in the palace by the furious emperor. Even her birth mother, imperial concubine Fang, was not allowed to visit. Hearing that the emperor had arrived, Princess Xu He's eyes flashed with joy. Imperial father had always doted on her and would definitely not punish her. She tidied her clothes and went out to welcome him. Imperial father, Pa! What greeted her was a resounding slap. Chapter 399. The emperor used a lot of strength in his anger and Princess Xu He fell to the ground. She covered half of her face. There was no need to look, it was already swollen. Imperial father. Princess Xu He looked at the emperor in disbelief. She couldn't believe that he had just hit her without caring about his status. You really disappoint me. The emperor looked at his daughter who was as beautiful as a flower. He had many children. Just counting the princesses, there were more than 10 of them. Among them, Princess Xu He was born in a noble family and had the most outstanding appearance out of all his daughters. He had always doted on her. However, there was a limit to an emperor's love. From what I see, I have spoiled you too much. That's why you have such an arrogant personality. The emperor looked at Princess Shu-He and said coldly. You think that Yunzhen is climbing up the social ladder by marrying you? Go and ask all the princesses in the palace if they are willing to marry Yunzhen. I can tolerate you throwing a tantrum and being a little arrogant. My daughter should naturally be proud. However, you can't even tell what's important and what's not. The emperor looked at his daughter in disappointment. You actually dared to hire an assassin to assassinate an important official of the court and my great general of the country. Hearing this, Princess Shu-He, who had been feeling wronged and confused, finally understood that what she had been worried about had happened. Imperial father knew what she had done. This made her heart sink to the bottom. She understood her imperial father. He was a true emperor. This also meant that no matter how much he doted on her, she couldn't compare to his country. She hurriedly got up and walked to the emperor's side on her knees. She tugged at his robe. Imperial father, I know I was wrong. I was just blinded by greed. I really know I was wrong. Besides, isn't General Fu fine? The emperor saw that she was still looking for excuses and his heart turned cold. 2 assassinations, did she really know she was wrong? He coldly flung away the crying Princess Shu-He. Stay here and reflect. If you really know you were wrong, there will be plenty of opportunities for you to atone for the court. Humph. He snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and left. Imperial concubine Fang, who had rushed over after hearing the news, was first stopped outside the palace by the guards in charge of guarding Princess Shu-He. She was also stopped outside when she went to ask for an audience with the emperor. Only then did she realize the importance of this matter. However, no matter how she thought about it, she could not figure out what kind of mistake her daughter had committed. Gu Xingyin was summoned to the palace by the emperor. That group of assassins entered the Supreme Court and committed suicide by taking poison one by one. They were unable to detect the mastermind behind the scenes. The emperor said apologetically to Gu Xingyin. Fortunately, His Highness Prince Rong is fine. Gu Xingyin was not surprised that the emperor had suppressed this matter. After all, if this matter was exposed, the entire imperial family would lose face. The emperor could not afford to lose face like this. That's right, I have already drafted a decree. Princess Shu-He suddenly fell ill and is now recuperating in the palace of Gongquan. I'm afraid she will not be able to marry you. Your marriage will be cancelled. The emperor seemed to be a bit tired. He waved his hand at her and had her leave. Not long after Gu Xingyin returned to the Fu, she received the imperial decree from the palace as well as a large pile of rewards. This honor was so great that many people who had laughed at Fu Yunzhen because of the cancellation of his marriage with the princess were speechless. Only Gu Xingyin knew that this was just another form of compensation from the emperor to her. Chapter 400. Gu Xingyin had just ordered people to carry the rewards from the palace to the warehouse when she saw the old housekeeper. Father, why is he looking for me? The old housekeeper had always been by old General Fu's side. Now that he came to find her, Gu Xingyin didn't have to think of other possibilities. Father. Gu Xingyin came to old General Fu's study. The old housekeeper considerately closed the door, leaving the father and daughter some private space. Tell me honestly, what happened? His Majesty can't give so many rewards to our family for no reason. Old General Fu looked at Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin didn't think so, didn't it say in the imperial edict? Princess Shuha contracted a serious disease and our marriage was cancelled. This is the compensation from the royal family. Old General Fu impatiently interrupted her, I want to hear the truth. The royal family's excuse might be able to fool ordinary people, but for people like them, they knew that something must have happened. Gu Xingyin suddenly gave a short laugh and looked at his father with a strange gaze. Do you really want to know? Old General Fu looked at his daughter and frowned. Then I will tell you the truth. It was because Princess Shuha didn't want to marry me. The last time I came back victorious, the assassination at the city gate was her doing. Old General Fu squeezed the teacup in his hand so hard that a crack appeared. He had thought of many possibilities, but he didn't expect it to be like this. You. He looked at his daughter with a dry throat, but he didn't know what to say. In the end, he was also at fault. If it wasn't for his mistake, his daughter wouldn't have to suffer so much. Gu Xingyin stood there quietly. She was waiting for old General Fu to say something. She knew that the real Fu Yunjin was also waiting for her whole life. She didn't know what she wanted to hear. Maybe it was the affirmation from her father, or maybe it was the late regret of her father, or maybe it was something else. However, Fu Yunjin's life was too short. In the end, she didn't get what she wanted. Gu Xingyin suddenly felt a strong sense of sorrow in her heart. She was shocked. This was not what she should be feeling. The system gave the answer in time. This is the instinct that the original owner, Fu Yunjin, engraved in the depths of his body. The host was slightly affected for a while. Gu Xingyin had also heard that hosts like them who were doing quests, such as herself, possessed the body of the original host. It was equivalent to living a new life in their place. The original host's soul had long since melted away. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be able to affect the host at all. However, humans were, after all, one of the most mysterious races in the world. Their feelings were also the most complicated and difficult to understand. Just like now, the real Fu Yunjin had died long ago in her previous life, but some deep obsession remained in her body. Unless she got an answer, she would never be able to get rid of it. As long as it didn't affect the mission, Gu Xingyin didn't mind helping these hosts complete their obsessions. However, after waiting for a long time, she still didn't hear old General Fu's words. Gu Xingyin looked at him coldly. Old General Fu clearly had regret in his heart, but because of his personality and his face, he couldn't say a word of apology to his daughter. She decided to give him a strong dose of medicine. Chapter 401. Father, look at me, Gu Xingyin said. Old General Fu was a little surprised. After his daughter became sensible, their relationship became very bad. She was rarely willing to take the initiative to start a conversation. Gu Xingyin said slowly, actually, when I was very young, I admired you very much. Her eyes were a little empty, as if she had returned to a distant childhood. I remember that you were still very young at that time. Although you were still so serious, I wanted to be close to you. Because I felt that you were very powerful, and other people's fathers couldn't compare to you. Although from then on, you started to make me learn the horse stance, run in the snow in winter in a thin layer of clothes, and drive piles. I felt very wronged, but I still gritted my teeth and persevered. Because when I did these things, I hoped that I could do my best, and then you would praise me. But in the end, I knew that I would never be able to satisfy you. Even if my spear skills could beat all my peers, even if I could exceed the quota set by you every day, I still couldn't satisfy you at all. Because I'm not the heir you expected, because I'm a girl. Gu Xingyin's eyes seemed to be burning with a blazing fire. It was so bright that it was frightening. From the moment I learned about the difference between men and women, I understood my life's fate. When the other girls were in groups, admiring the flowers and reciting poems, calling their friends to go on a cruise, admiring the moon, dressing up beautifully and going out to play, I was working hard bit by bit, wanting to do better. I didn't ask for much. I just wanted you to give me an affirmation and smile at me. Tell me that even if I'm just a girl, I won't be worse than any man. But I didn't. Gu Xingyin suddenly smiled, but her eyes were red. I know that you don't like me. Sometimes, when I see the enemy's sword on the battlefield, I even think about not dodging and just letting it cut my body. Why should I bear so much? I can't enjoy the slightest bit of relaxation and happiness in my life. Why should I live for Fu Yunjin in the eyes of others? But you won, father. The ideas you instilled in me since I was young made it impossible for me to escape and end everything with death, which is like a coward's behavior. I can't let go of the Fu clan's century-old reputation. I can't let go of the Tianyun dynasty's border soldiers. I knew that my life would be like this. Enough. Old General Fu had never thought that his daughter would have such thoughts. He was strict with her and never smiled. It was never because she was a girl. This daughter of his had always been his pride. Ever since she had grown up, he had been seeing her less and less. It wasn't because he didn't like her, but every time he saw his daughter's face that resembled his late wife's, the guilt in his heart made him feel too ashamed to face his daughter. He never knew that this child had so many worries hidden in her heart. He also didn't know that there was such a big misunderstanding between father and daughter. The huge sorrow in his heart almost made him unable to stand. Looking at his daughter who was stubbornly looking at him, the wall in old General Fu's heart collapsed. I was wrong. He finally spoke the words that had been hidden in his heart for many years. Chapter 402. Old General Fu looked at his daughter. After saying those words, the stone that had been pressing down on his heart for decades was finally removed. It has nothing to do with you. It's all my fault. Old General Fu's expression became calm again as he looked at his daughter. For so many years, I've always felt that you hated me. I'm afraid that you didn't want to see me. That's why I never told you. You have always been my proudest daughter. I didn't want to see you, not because I didn't want to see you, but because I felt that I wasn't a qualified father. I didn't have the face to face you. Old General Fu and Fu Yunjin, the father and daughter, finally had their first long talk in 24 years. That night, Gu Xingyin came to Jiang Huan's residence. Drink with me. Gu Xingyin only said one sentence to him. Jiang Huan intuitively realized that something big must have happened to Gu Xingyin, but looking at her appearance, he didn't ask much. He just ordered the servants to quickly prepare a table of good dishes and bring out the old wine from the residence. Gu Xingyin poured cup after cup of wine into her mouth. Her expression was both sad and happy. Old General Fu's words just now didn't have much effect on Gu Xingyin, but for Fu Yunjin's body, it overturned her 24 years of understanding. So at this moment, her mood was very agitated. She just wanted to find someone to get drunk and then fall into a deep sleep. For Gu Xingyin, her lover was undoubtedly the best choice. She could reveal everything in front of him without any scruples. Jiang Huan kept silent as he watched Gu Xingyin raise her head and drink until her eyes began to blur with drunkenness. He raised his hand to stop Gu Xingyin's hand from raising the wine cup. Enough, Yunjin, you are drunk. But with Gu Xingyin's skills, how could he stop him? With a flip of his hand, he cleverly broke free from Jiang Huan's restraint. In the blink of an eye, he downed another cup of wine. No, no, no. I'm happy. Gu Xingyin looked at Jiang Huan with a smile and winked at him mysteriously. You know what? I always thought that he didn't like me, but today, he told me that he was so cold and strict to me because he felt sorry for me. Gu Xingyin snorted and laughed, telling Jiang Huan these things without a care. Actually, as a member of the Fu family, I don't think it is bad to shoulder the responsibility of the Fu family. Why didn't he tell me earlier? Jiang Huan listened in silence. From her words, he could guess that Gu Xingyin was talking about his father, old General Fu. The relationship between old General Fu and his only son, Fu Yunjin, was not a secret in the capital. In public, the father and son treated each other coldly. However, from Gu Xingyin's words, there seemed to be more to it than meets the eye. Jiang Huan did not ask. In his heart, he knew that Yunjin just wanted to find someone to talk to and did not need his answer. But he did not expect that Gu Xingyin would throw such a shocking news at him. All these years, I worked so hard and risked my life, wasn't it just to get his affirmation? Just to let him know that I, as a daughter, am not worse than any man. He actually said that he doesn't care about this. Clang! Jiang Huan's hand trembled and the cup in his hand fell on the table. Some of the remaining wine in the cup fell on his lapel, but he was not in the mood to care about this. Chapter 403. He looked at Gu Xingyin in shock. For a moment, he even wondered if he had been intoxicated by the fragrance of the wine. It was as if he was hallucinating. Yunjin. Jiang Huan could clearly hear his heartbeat beating like a drum. He tried to keep his voice calm. Gu Xingyin raised her eyes and looked at him with some effort. Looking at her, Jiang Huan felt that there was something wrong with his good friend. Her skin was so fair and delicate. Her facial features were so delicate that she did not look like a man's. When she looked at people with drunken eyes, she was charming and seductive. There were so many flaws. Why was it that he had never doubted his identity for so long? In the end, it was because the fact that old General Fu raised his daughter as a man was too unbelievable. It was also because he went to the battlefield at the age of 15. For 9 years, he cleared all doubts with his military achievements. How could such a person be a woman? You said earlier that you are a woman. Jiang Huan decided to verify with Gu Xingyin. At this moment, he was very glad that he had already ordered all the servants to leave. Gu Xingyin was completely free at this time. When she heard Jiang Huan's question, she nodded seriously, yes. She looked up at Jiang Huan and suddenly grinned, you don't believe it, do you? She nodded. That's true. If it were me, I probably wouldn't believe it either. As she spoke, she actually stood up shakily and reached out to pull her belt. Let me show you. Jiang Huan was stunned. He quickly stood up and stopped her. This person was very different from her usual self when drunk. Thinking of Gu Xingyin's behavior when she was drunk twice, Jiang Huan was even more determined to keep an eye on her in the future. He would not let her have the chance to get drunk in front of others. He was being kind, but Gu Xingyin did not appreciate his kindness at all. Don't stop me, She struggled to break free from Jiang Huan's grasp and successfully pulled out the belt in her hand. Her originally neat outer robe instantly loosened, revealing the snow-white inner robe underneath. Only then did Jiang Huan realize that the body hidden under the outer robe was indeed excessively slender. He helplessly looked at the drunkard. His heart was filled with endless joy, but he didn't want to take advantage of her in such a situation. Once again, he walked forward, covered her with the robe, and softly coaxed her, I believe that Yun Zhen is a woman, but a woman can't casually take off her clothes in front of others. Jiang Huan finally understood his feelings and realized that he had fallen in love with a man, and that man was his good friend. Jiang Huan, who had been suffering all this time, felt redeemed by the heavens today. He looked at the person in front of him and his heart was filled with emotions. He just wanted to hug her tightly in his arms and bite her red lips so that the two of them would never be separated again. However, he had always been a gentleman and was unwilling to take advantage of others. He wanted to be a gentleman, but Gu Xingyin wasn't willing to give him the chance. Gu Xingyin listened to him and nodded very seriously, I know, a woman's body can't be seen by others, only by the person she likes. She raised her head, and the corners of her eyes, which were red because of the alcohol, had an indescribable charm. She reached out and wrapped her arms around the neck of the person in front of her. Slowly, her body moved closer to him, and her breath smelled like orchids, but I like Xian, and I want to show it to you. Today, 20,000 words were sent. This was all the chapters that Gigi had saved for the past 3 months, and it was also the last time that she would update. After that, she would update 8,000 to 10,000 words every day in the morning. Mwah, good night everyone. Then, I recommend my super good friend Huan Chu's Transmigration System, Guide to Prince Charming. It's a very good book. Chapter 404. Gu Xingyin woke up very early the next day. She felt that something was wrong the moment she woke up, so she didn't open her eyes. Gu Xingyin's mind raced. Scenes flashed through her mind, and she finally understood what she had done last night. After she got drunk, she not only confessed her details clearly, but also packed herself up and sent herself out. When she thought of something, she couldn't help but breathe erratically. She felt the arm around her waist tighten its grip. At the same time, a familiar voice came from above her head. "Good morning, Yunjin." Jiang Huan's voice was very normal, without much awkwardness, which calmed Gu Xingyin a lot. She secretly despised herself. How many lives have I experienced? How can I not be as calm as my lover who has no reincarnation memory? Thinking of this, she looked over and met Jiang Huan's smiling eyes. "Good morning, Xian." Aware that the hand behind her back was slowly moving, Gu Xingyin blinked and said, "I'm going to see my father today. I ran out yesterday, so he probably feels uneasy." The man's intention couldn't be more obvious. Although Fu Yunjin's body was good, it was his first time after all, and he couldn't withstand another ravaging. Who would have thought that Jiang Huan, who looked so weak, was actually so strong in some aspects? Jiang Huan sighed. He had a soft body in his arms, and it was the first time he had tasted it. It was impossible to say that he didn't want it. But looking at Gu Xingyin's appearance, he knew that he couldn't force her. He withdrew his hand and watched as Gu Xingyin got up and put on her clothes without any hesitation. When Gu Xingyin finished putting on her clothes, she turned around and found that Jiang Huan had also finished dressing. Jiang Huan looked at her and suddenly sighed. "I don't know when I'll be able to draw Yunjin's eyebrows." Gu Xingyin was silent. She was now a man, so of course, she couldn't put on makeup, draw eyebrows, and paste flowers on her face. Jiang Huan's wish might never come true. Looking at her, Jiang Huan suddenly realized what he had said. He stepped forward and gently wrapped his arms around Gu Xingyin's waist from behind. "Don't think too much. I just said it casually." In fact, Gu Xingyin was not sad at all. When she heard her lover's comforting words, she was still in the mood to joke. "You are the dignified Prince Rong. As long as you open your mouth, many women would be willing to let you draw their eyebrows for them even if they don't want their status." Jiang Huan frowned and tightened his grip on Gu Xingyin. He said in a deep voice, "Yunjin, don't ever say such things again. Since I, Jiang Huan, have decided on you for my entire life, there will be no one else." Gu Xingyin knew that he was her lover, so she had confidence in him. But when he heard these words, he couldn't help but feel touched. Fu Yunjin's true identity could not be revealed to the public. Otherwise, the Fu family would be accused of deceiving the emperor. If Jiang Huan chose to be with her, then it was very likely that their relationship could not be made public for the rest of their lives. He could not marry and have children. He was bound to face pressure from the outside world and even the imperial family. Gu Xingyin felt that she was being very selfish. She knew that this was very unfair to Jiang Huan. But she couldn't bear that her lover had another woman. What's more, she was not the kind of woman who liked to be paranoid and sad. She knew how deep her lover's feelings for her were. She had enough confidence that in Jiang Huan's eyes, there was no room for other women. Chapter 405. Gu Xingyin did not stay in Jiang Huan's courtyard for long. She tried her best to ignore the slight discomfort in her body and sat in Jiang Huan's carriage to return to the Fu residence. As she expected, her father did not sleep for the entire night. For the first time, the father and daughter did not treat each other coldly and had a harmonious lunch in silence. The old housekeeper watched from the side with tears in his eyes. For so many years, he had seen the old general silent and the young miss sad. He had never thought that he would be able to see the two of them bury the hatchet in his lifetime. At the end of the month, the Di Rong tribe invaded the northwest. Gu Xingyin was ordered by the emperor to lead the army to battle. The night before departure, Jiang Huan came to the general's residence and poured a cup of wine for her. "I wish you a victorious return." Gu Xingyin smiled and nodded. As the female lead of this world, Fu Yunjin was loved by the laws of fortune. Her title of invincible was not false. She looked at her lover's increasingly rosy face. Ever since Jiang Huan took the medicine she took from the system, his body had improved a lot. The vitality that he had lost due to his congenital deficiency had also been replenished. Gu Xingyin departed in the 10th month. In the 11th month of the 20th year of Changsheng, there was a report of victory from the army. General Fu led the army to capture the enemy's commander alive. At the end of the 11th month, there was another piece of news. The Tianyun dynasty's army had launched a surprise attack on the enemy's court and taken the head of King Di Rong. During the emperor's birthday in the 12th month, Fu Yunjin brought the soldiers back to the court and presented a congratulatory gift, a contract in which Di Rong swore to be an eternal vassal. It also included the new King Di Rong's wish to be eternally united with the Tianyun dynasty for 100 years. The emperor was very happy and issued a decree on the spot to confer Fu Yunjin the title of General Marquis. She was first rank and enjoyed the salary of a Junwang. After this decree was issued, matchmakers came to the general's residence to propose marriage. Everyone knew that the General Marquis was greatly favored by the emperor. At such a young age, he was already a high-ranking official. In the future, he would be even more fortunate. Now that his engagement with Princess Shu he was cancelled, he was the best candidate for a son-in-law in the eyes of the nobles. Of course, these people were all politely rejected by General Fu. Fu Yunjin, on the other hand, had been used as a pretext by Jiang Huan because of this matter. "You're quite popular these days." Jiang Huan opened his mouth and bit Gu Xingyin's fair shoulder. Gu Xingyin gasped and said unsteadily, "Are you a dog?" Jiang Huan chuckled, but his lower body did not stop moving. Gu Xingyin had no choice but to cling to him tightly. "I'm a dog, and I'm here to bite you, the delicious cake." The rest of the words were left unspoken. At the beginning of the next year, the palace issued a decree to confer the title of Princess Duanjing to represent the Tianyun dynasty in a political marriage with Di Rong. As soon as the imperial edict came out, there was an uproar everywhere. Everyone knew about this kind of political marriage. It had always been those princesses who were not favored by the emperor. Sometimes, the emperor would even feel sorry for his own daughter and choose a girl of the right age from the imperial family to be conferred as a princess. As for Princess Shu He, no matter how much everyone thought about it, they still couldn't understand why the emperor would send his beloved daughter to Di Rong's bitter and cold place for a political marriage. It was said that Consort Fang fainted when she heard the news. When she woke up, she went to the emperor's palace and knelt for a long time, hoping that the emperor would take back the decree. However, even after she knelt for an entire day and night and was carried away by the eunuchs due to exhaustion, the emperor did not change his mind. In the 3rd month of the 21st year of Changsheng, Princess Duanjing led the grand political marriage procession and set off for Di Rong. Chapter 406. Fu Yunjin, the god of war in the hearts of the Tianyun dynasty's citizens. He started on the battlefield at the age of 15 and became a sharp sword in the hands of the emperor. In 20 years, he led the soldiers of the Tianyun dynasty to expand their territory. He participated in hundreds of wars, big and small, without a single defeat. He truly created an undefeatable legend. No one questioned his title as the god of war. In the end, under his leadership, the Tianyun dynasty swept through all the surrounding countries, allowing the Tianyun dynasty to complete its great undertaking of unification. He was a smart person and chose to retire when his reputation was at its peak. The emperor urged him to stay again and again, but he was not moved to retire. In the end, the emperor personally wrote an edict, conferring him the title of King General and bestowing him with countless treasures. This king general had never taken a wife in his life. There were rumors that he once met a woman he loved in the war, but that woman later died in order to save him. The king general was deeply in love with her and did not marry for the rest of his life. Some people said that he missed his former fiancée, Princess Duanjing of the Yuan family's Di Rong from 10 years ago, so he did not take a wife. There were also rumors that this king general was actually gay and had no interest in women. There were all kinds of rumors, but the king general was very carefree and never stood out to refute them. When someone discovered that the king general had not appeared for many days, a servant of the king general's residence came out and said that their king had finally relieved himself of a heavy burden. Now that the world was at peace, it was only right for him to travel and see the great rivers and mountains. No one knew that King Rong, who rarely appeared in front of people because of his poor health, was also traveling with him. In a small town in Jiangnan far away from the capital, a young couple suddenly moved in. The man stood tall like a pine tree and was extraordinarily handsome. The woman's facial features were bright and beautiful. Her every frown and smile was occasionally fierce, different from the style of a normal woman. This small town was very far from the city. The most important people the townspeople had seen were the country gentry in the town. When had they seen such a graceful person? At first, they only watched from afar. Later, they saw that the two did not put on airs and seemed to want to live here for a long time, so they slowly became familiar with them. It was said that this young master's name was Jiang Xian, and he was from a wealthy merchant family in the capital. He liked the environment in Jiangnan, so he brought his wife here to settle down. This young master Jiang was, of course, Jiang Huan. His wife was Gu Xingyin, who was now traveling the world. In the morning, Gu Xingyin sat in front of the bronze mirror. The man beside her was holding an eyebrow pencil, carefully drawing the outline of her brows. Now, I can finally draw Yunjin's eyebrows. After finishing the last stroke, Jiang Huan put down the brush and pulled her into his arms. Gu Xingyin glanced sideways at the mirror. Their silhouettes overlapped in the mirror, snuggling up to each other as they enjoyed each other's company. In the winter of the 34th year of Changsheng, someone suddenly knocked on the door of General Fu's residence in the capital. An unfamiliar man was holding a baby in his arms. In his arms was a letter personally written by the General Fu Yunjin. The letter clearly stated that the child was born while he was traveling. The child's mother had an accident and it was inconvenient for him to take the child with him. Therefore, he asked someone to bring the child back home and let his father raise the child on his behalf. Old General Fu, who was almost 60 years old, looked at the familiar child and burst into tears for a moment. He named the child Fu Suixin. It meant that he hoped that he could live freely and unrestrained. His daughter had finally obtained her own happiness. Chapter 407. General, you're awake. A gentle voice sounded. A figure in a huge hibernation chamber opened her eyes, glanced at the person beside her, and nodded. There was no sign of sleepiness on her face. She got up and walked to the large display screen. Behind her, the person who woke her up looked at her with an inexplicable expression. This was a very handsome woman. Using the adjective handsome to describe a woman was usually not very appropriate, but it was incomparably appropriate to use on this woman. It was said that men in military uniforms were the most handsome. This sentence was also applicable to women. The close-fitting design of the empire's military uniform outlined her tall and straight figure meticulously. Under her neatly trimmed short hair was a perfect androgynous face. Her pair of emotionless brown eyes were enough to make most of the empire's citizens fall head over heels for her. This time, the mission world Gu Xingyin came to was different from the past. The Great Milky Way era was 1003. Humans had entered the era of super technology. The planet they lived on was no longer enough to satisfy them. The entire Milky Way, or even the more distant and unpredictable interstellar, was their goal to conquer. Today's humans could strengthen their genes through various genetic repair fluids to obtain strong abilities and vitality. The average lifespan of humans had been extended to 500 years. Of course, some of the strong people standing at the top had even longer lifespans. For example, Gu Xingyin's body this time, the only female general of the Galaxy Empire, Sita Jean. The Galaxy Empire was one of the two major forces in the Milky Way. Its counterpart was the Interstellar Federation, which was known as a liberal democracy. Situ Jean was born into a political family in the Galaxy Empire. However, she was not interested in politics. At the age of 18, she entered the Empire Military Academy on her own. 5 years later, she graduated with an SSS grade and directly entered the Violent Lion Legion, one of the 3 ace legions of the Empire. For the next 20 years, she climbed up step by step until last year, when she was personally awarded the Medal of Honor by the Emperor of the Galaxy Empire and became the commander of the Violent Lion Legion. In the Empire, besides the Marshal, the highest ranks were the commanders of the 3 ace legions, which were the 3 generals of the Empire. Not only was Situ Jean the only commander, but he was also the youngest general in the history of the Empire. The people of the Empire were guessing that if this continued, Situ Jean would very likely become the first female marshal since the establishment of the Galaxy Empire. However, Situ Jean was unable to continue. The reason was because of the gentle adjutant standing behind her, Lin Qi. As Situ Jin's adjutant, Lin Qi was Situ Jin's confidant and one of the people she trusted the most in the world. However, the person she trusted the most had betrayed her during the war between Situ Jean and the Federation. Situ Jean had died in the battle against the Empire and the Federation. She was also the highest-ranking commander who had died on the battlefield during the 1,000-year conflict between the Empire and the Federation. The Emperor was furious, and the small skirmishes between the 2 sides became white-hot. From then on, both sides began to fight to the death. The war spread to the entire galaxy, and the entire Milky Way fell into chaos. That's a story for another day. Gu Xingyin, who had read the plot, knew that her adjutant wasn't called Lin Qi at all. It wasn't a coincidence that she came to the Violent Lion Legion and became her adjutant. She had planned it step by step. Chapter 408. Lin Qi's real name was Qi Lin. Her father was a soldier of the Federation, and her mother was an ordinary person of the Empire. Although the Empire and the Federation didn't have a good relationship, intermarriage wasn't a rare thing. However, Qi Lin's father had lost his life in the last war between the Federation and the Empire. Originally, her father didn't have to die. When the Federation army saw that the situation was hopeless, they chose to surrender. However, at that time, the commander of the Violent Lion Legion, Situ Jean, had given the order to not leave anyone alive. That was why her father still died after surrendering. This was the news Qi Lin had obtained after investigating for a long time. Because of this, she hated Situ Jean. She concealed her identity and prepared for a long time. Finally, after careful planning, she came to Situ Jin's side and became her adjutant, obtaining her trust. The original Situ Jean didn't understand until her death why her adjutant betrayed her. However, when Gu Xingyin found out, she only felt sorrow. Not only for Situ Jean, but also for Qi Lin. Situ Jean had given the order to not leave anyone alive, but that was because the army Qi Lin's father was in wasn't an ordinary Federation army. They were a secret organization of the Federation that specialized in human experiments. Their methods were extremely cruel and seriously violated the Interstellar Convention jointly promulgated by the various forces of the Milky Way. Situ Jean had been ordered to destroy all of this. Because the truth wasn't suitable to be announced, the public thought that this was just an ordinary small-scale war. Qi Lin had always thought that her father was a hero. In order to avenge him, she didn't hesitate to do so many things. In that battle, not only did Situ Jean die, but the Violent Lion Legion's 3rd Fleet was almost completely wiped out. This was all caused by Qi Lin. Because of this alone, Gu Xingyin couldn't tolerate her. The two were now on the Violent Lion Legion's largest command ship, Star Wing. Situ Jean represented the Galaxy Empire and headed to a neutral force in the northern part of the Milky Way, Storm Chamber of Commerce. The Storm Chamber of Commerce didn't belong to any force. It occupied a planet by itself. It was said that the leader of the Chamber of Commerce had some unclear relationship with the two largest forces in the Milky Way, the Galaxy Empire and the Interstellar Federation. Therefore, it had always existed peacefully. As for the other smaller forces, it wasn't that they didn't have any ideas about the Windstorm Chamber of Commerce. It was just that a neighboring principality had clamored to occupy the Windstorm Chamber of Commerce the day before, and the next day, the royal family had changed, so no one dared to have any ideas about it. As a member of the Empire, Gu Xingyin knew that the reason why the Storm Chamber of Commerce was able to stand tall was not because they had people in both the Empire and the Federation, but because they relied on their own backers. Major Lin Qi, she suddenly said. Qi Lin was looking at Gu Xingyin from behind. She was startled when Gu Xingyin called out to her. She didn't know why, but she had a bad premonition. She smiled and said, "Sir General, what can I do for you?" Gu Xingyin turned around and looked at her intently. He said in a deep voice, "I want to know, why did you change your appearance and try so hard to come to my side?" Qi Lin. As soon as she finished speaking, Qi Lin's expression changed. From Gu Xingyin's words, she only knew that there was a problem with her identity. She didn't know the inside story. However, Qi Lin knew that with the Empire's powerful intelligence network, if they really wanted to investigate, her details would appear in Situ Jin's database in less than an hour. Chapter 409. General. Qi Lin's expression changed, and she said, "I've always admired you, but my birth can't pass the Violent Lion Legion's inspection." She decided to confess with a half-truth. "I'm sure you know that my father was a federal soldier, and my galactic pass says that I'm a federal citizen. With such an identity, it's impossible for me to get close to you, so I used a little trick." She knew that unless an S-level secret investigation was launched, the things she did in private wouldn't be enough to be unearthed. As long as she dealt with it properly, Qi Lin comforted herself that nothing would go wrong. "Oh." Gu Xingyin's expression didn't change. She still spoke calmly, but her words were like thunder exploding in Qi Lin's ears. "I thought you spent so much effort to sneak into the Violent Lion Legion and come to my side to avenge your father." Qi Lin suddenly raised her head and looked at the person in front of her. She was still expressionless, but Qi Lin seemed to see a faint mockery in her cold gaze. The general knew everything about her. Qi Lin felt helpless. Everything about her so-called revenge plan had to be built on a foundation to succeed, and that was Situ Jin's trust. If Situ Jin no longer trusted her, then she would just be a small adjutant, and those plans would be an extravagant hope. This was also the reason why Gu Xingyin chose to lay her cards on the table. The difference between Qi Lin and Situ Jin was too great. Gu Xingyin didn't need to spend much effort on her. Without Situ Jin's trust, Qi Lin wouldn't have been able to do anything on the Violent Lion Legion's battleship, which was strictly disciplined and well-guarded. Qi Lin saw that her goal was exposed, so she didn't say anything else. She sneered and looked at Gu Xingyin. "Since you already know my goal, why are you pretending to be confused?" "That's right, I, Qi Lin, came to the Violent Lion Legion to seek justice for my father who died in vain. What I want is your life, Situ Jin." Gu Xingyin's expression remained indifferent. Even when Qi Lin said those words, she was not moved at all. She looked at the agitated Qi Lin as though she was looking at a clown. "Senior Colonel Shen, come to the command center." She ignored Qi Lin and called for her other trusted aide, the captain of the Violent Lion Legion's First Fleet. "Sir General." Shinan came very quickly. He was a very handsome and charming man. If it wasn't for the military uniform and badge on his body, no one would have thought that he was the rumored First Fleet captain of the Violent Lion Legion, the most belligerent. Shinan sensed the unusual atmosphere in the command room as soon as he entered. He bowed to Gu Xingyin and stood quietly by the side, waiting for further instructions. "Shinan, tell Major Lin Qi who our opponents were in the battle in the northern Green Plains 3 years ago." Shinan was shocked. He was one of the few people who knew about the secret mission. He was one of the few people who knew about it. This was a military secret. Shinan glanced at Gu Xingyin. A soldier obeying orders had the upper hand. He slowly told her what happened 3 years ago. Impossible. My father was a glorious federal soldier. How could he be one of those crazy experimenters you speak of? Qi Lin couldn't accept this at all. If what Shinan said was true, then wouldn't all the beliefs he had all along become a joke? Chapter 410. Gu Xingyin looked at her exhausted figure on the ground and pressed a button. Soon, a few fully armed soldiers walked over and saluted Gu Xingyin. General. Gu Xingyin lifted her chin slightly and looked at Qi Lin. This person's background is very suspicious. I suspect that she deliberately approached the core command group of the Violent Lion Legion and has other motives. Take her to the Empire's military court. The soldiers clearly knew this adjutant who was highly regarded by the general. They were shocked when they heard this. However, as professional soldiers, they would not disobey their superiors' orders. They obeyed the order and took the person away. After knowing that Qi Lin was taken away, Shinan asked his superior, General, what happened? Gu Xingyin looked at this partner who had accompanied Situ Jin for more than 10 years. Her expression softened. The battle you mentioned just now, Qi Lin is the descendant of one of the soldiers. She came to take revenge on the Violent Lion Legion. Shen An's expression changed. There was a trace of disgust in his eyes. He sneered. Those inhumane people. Lin Qi. Qi Lin still has the face to talk about revenge? She might not know that the Violent Lion Legion's operation was tacitly approved by the Federation President. The Federation President and the Prime Minister had different political views. Both sides were constantly fighting for the right to speak in politics. The reason why the Empire's operation had gone so smoothly was also due to the efforts of the Federation President. Gu Xingyin shook her head. I suspect that she doesn't know anything at all. She probably came here to take revenge because she was bewitched by others. Let's wait for the results of the military court. After dealing with Qi Lin, Gu Xingyin did not feel much more relaxed. She knew that Qi Lin alone could not have made such a thorough plan to come to Situ Jin's side step by step. There must be someone behind her controlling everything. Moreover, that person might have his own influence in the military. Moreover, to Situ Jin, that person did not come with good intentions. As Qi Lin's revenge plan in the storyline succeeded, the mastermind behind it did not appear. Therefore, the system could not reveal any information beyond the storyline to Gu Xingyin. Forget it, let's take it one step at a time. Since Qi Lin had already been exposed, the other party should not have the ability to plant a new nail in the Violent Lion Legion in the short term. After 1 day and 1 night, the fleet from the Violent Lion Legion arrived at the planet where the Storm Chamber of Commerce was located, Storm Star. Gu Xingyin was a general of the Galaxy Empire. Her status was even higher than that of the lords of some small planets. Naturally, the group received a personal reception from the Windstorm Chamber of Commerce's president. It said that General Situ is a hag. Some natives of Storm Planet, who had only heard of Gu Xingyin's reputation, whispered. I don't know. Other than the war, I rarely hear any rumors about this lord. The military kept the information of the generals strictly confidential. When they appeared, all kinds of surveillance equipment were activated. Even if it was taken, it would be destroyed. Unlike the men, many women from Storm Star also stood here today, wanting to see the first female general of the Empire. Situ Jin had countless fans in the Milky Way. Even if most people had never seen her face, they did not reject the fact that this legendary figure was their idol. Chapter 411. The enormous Starhawk slowly landed on Storm Star, and rows of orderly soldiers walked down from the warship. Thomas, the head of the Storm Chamber of Commerce, was envious. He knew how terrifying these silent soldiers could be in battle. Immediately, everyone turned to look at the cabin door. A tall figure walked out and walked down the stairs of the warship step by step. Tap, tap, tap. This was the sound of military boots stepping on the ground. When their commander passed by, the soldiers on both sides stretched out their right hands and performed a standard military salute. The wind blew up her dark green windbreaker. Gu Xingyin didn't have any extra expression on her face as she walked straight to the president of the Storm Chamber of Commerce. Before she could say anything, her expression suddenly froze. The next moment, the dagger at her waist was unsheathed and accurately blocked somewhere. Clang! The sound of metal colliding rang out. At the same time, Gu Xingyin withdrew her left hand. Not far away, there was the sound of a dull object falling to the ground. Without needing her to say anything, the soldiers behind her consciously ran in that direction. President Thomas, the security and defense of Storm Star still needs to be strengthened. Gu Xingyin calmly looked at the president of the Storm Chamber of Commerce, whose expression had become quite unsightly since the scene just happened. Seeing this extremely imposing woman neatly put the dagger that had blocked the bullet back to her waist, President Thomas put away the shock in his heart and sincerely apologized. "I'm really sorry that this happened. Your Excellency, the Storm Chamber of Commerce will definitely give you a satisfactory explanation." Gu Xingyin nodded slightly and walked into the Storm Chamber of Commerce under Thomas's lead. Outside, the crowd of people who had just recovered from the shock were left. Just now, were my eyes playing tricks on me? Someone actually used a dagger to block a bullet? You're not playing tricks on your eyes, but isn't the main point that Storm Star received an assassination attempt the moment Her Excellency arrived? No. Isn't the main point that Her Excellency isn't a hag and is actually so handsome? Yes. If a woman can grow up to look like Her Excellency Situ, I would also be willing to marry her. A girl wearing a cute puffy skirt said with longing in her eyes. In the middle of the heated discussion, a man with short red hair stood out. Not only because of his pure red hair, but also because of the careless smile on his extremely handsome face. I like a cold and handsome woman. His eyes flashed with interest, but his words made the subordinates behind him break out in a cold sweat. Sir, she's a general of the Empire. You. The man behind him hesitated. The red-haired man glanced at him. What's wrong with being a general of the Empire? Don't generals of the Empire need to date? I'm such a handsome and charming man, how could she not like me? This subordinate was speechless at his master's willfulness, but he didn't dare to say anything more. Sir, don't look at how gentle he is right now. If you really annoy him, you won't even know how you died. Let's go, Hans. The red-haired man lazily called out to his subordinate and turned around to leave. He was thinking about how he should arrange his first encounter with the beauty. Chapter 412. Gu Xingyin and her entourage received the best treatment at the Storm Chamber of Commerce. Situ Jin came to Storm Star this time mainly to represent the Empire and the Storm Chamber of Commerce to discuss the purchase of a special interstellar energy or gray iron ore. Gray iron ore was one of the basic materials used to build starships. As the #1 exporter of gray iron ore, the Storm Chamber of Commerce was a worthy ally in the eyes of all forces. Of course, Gu Xingyin did not need to discuss the specific details. Naturally, there were specialized personnel in charge of negotiating with the Storm Chamber of Commerce. All she had to do was show her face, show the Empire's attitude, and express the importance of the Storm Chamber of Commerce. Your Excellency, in the afternoon, I will take you to visit our Storm Star. After lunch, a person in charge of the Storm Chamber of Commerce respectfully came to Gu Xingyin's side. Gu Xingyin happened to have nothing to do. She changed into her daily clothes and strolled around the central business district of Storm Star with 2 personal guards. However, although she did not wear a military uniform and no one knew her identity, her appearance alone attracted the attention of many people. After getting off the hover car for less than half an hour, Gu Xingyin received 3 invitations. These invitations were none other than those young, rich, and bored young masters and young ladies who wanted to have a good time with her. When the person in charge of the Storm Chamber of Commerce saw this situation, he deeply regretted that he did not think of asking Situ Jean to cover up a little. After all, her appearance was really a bit too attractive. The people of Storm Star had always been open-minded. It was not uncommon for men and women to develop an unusual relationship when they saw eye to eye. On one hand, the person in charge of the Storm Chamber of Commerce regretted it. On the other hand, he had to worry that Situ Jean would be annoyed by the harassment. If she could not help but make a move, no one on Storm Star would be a match for this SSS-level powerhouse. In fact, he was thinking too much. With Situ Jin's personality, she probably still felt that this kind of thing was quite fresh. If she really showed the slightest impatience, those invitations would probably not reach her at all. Those 2 personal guards were not just for show. It was normal that Gu Xingyin did not refuse. She was quite curious about this matter. In the Milky Way galaxy, if Situ Jin was in any place, it would undoubtedly be the Galaxy Empire. Most people might think that she had seen this kind of thing too many times, but in reality, Situ Jin had never even received a confession in all these years. It was because she was so popular in the Empire that some people had even deified her. As for the men, those who were of the same status as her were old enough to be her grandfather. Those who were of the same age as her were still working hard in the 3 armies. As a result, when Situ Jin appeared in the Empire, at most 1 or 2 admirers recognized her and offered her a bouquet of flowers. There was nothing else that was even more excessive. After rejecting a few more people, Gu Xingyin felt that it was about time. Later on, the men and women who were attracted by her appearance could not get close to her anymore. Until the man who seemed to be glowing appeared. The moment the red-haired man appeared, Gu Xingyin's body automatically tensed up and entered battle mode. This was a strong person who was not weaker than her. The next moment, her body returned to normal because she felt a familiar aura. Chapter 413. This beautiful lady, I don't know if I have the honor to invite you to have dinner together. The handsome red-haired man smiled widely. The 2 guards beside Gu Xingyin habitually stopped him from approaching, but for some reason, the red-haired man walked forward as usual, and the 2 men walked around as if they didn't see him. The faces of Gu Xingyin's guards changed instantly. This man was not someone they could deal with. The person in charge of the Windstorm Chamber of Commerce standing beside Gu Xingyin also had an ugly expression. If something happened to the Empire's admiral on Windstorm Star, it would not be a small matter. The red-haired man did not pay attention to the others. His eyes were fixed on Gu Xingyin's face, and his eyes were full of determination. What do you think? Beautiful lady? Okay. Gu Xingyin nodded coldly. The red-haired man was stunned for a moment. Not only him, but the people around Gu Xingyin were also stunned. Obviously, no one believed that she had just accepted a stranger's invitation. Moreover, it was a stranger's invitation. The red-haired man was only surprised for a second, and then he quickly showed an even brighter smile. I'm really flattered. Gu Xingyin glanced at him, and then looked at the sky. It's still early. If you want, take me around Windstorm Star. The guards beside her were anxious when they heard this. Miss. This was what they called her in front of outsiders. Gu Xingyin looked at them indifferently, and the 2 immediately fell silent. Go back and wait for me. It'll be fine. As for the person in charge of the Windstorm Chamber of Commerce, he wanted to stop them, but when he saw Gu Xingyin's eyes, he swallowed the words back. Forget it, this was an expert with an SSS physique. How could something happen so easily? General, why did you send away the people around you? After the few people left, the red-haired man said lazily. The woman in front of him was not surprised to hear him say her identity, which made his smile deeper. Who are you? What's your motive for approaching me? Gu Xingyin looked at him coldly. Don't be so serious. The red-haired man smiled and shook his finger. First question. My name is Enoch. I'm 10 years older than you. I'm currently single. He ignored Gu Xingyin's oppressive gaze and smiled faintly as he extended a second finger. The second question is, I fell in love with you at first sight and want to pursue you. After he finished speaking, he looked at Gu Xingyin and said, I've already answered your excellency's question. I wonder if you can promise me something. Gu Xingyin frowned and looked at him. I don't. Before she could finish her words, she suddenly retreated, but it was already too late. A warm sensation landed on her lips. Everyone knew what it was. The man retreated quickly, but he was still a step too late. Gently raising his hand to wipe the blood from the wound on his face, Enoch smiled helplessly. General, you're really ruthless. He was sure that if he hadn't retreated fast enough, the wound would have reached his neck. Gu Xingyin was shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere. Do you know what happened to the last person who dared to offend me? The red-haired man blinked innocently. I don't know. I only know that if I, Enoch, want someone, I will never fail. Chapter 4:14. Gu Xingyin suddenly smiled. It wasn't just a slight curl of her lips, but a real laugh. It was said that a rich man in the empire once said that if anyone could make General Situ smile, he would be willing to give them a villa in the empire's capital. However, no one had been able to achieve this. Even Enoch was dazzled by this smile. In the next second, the cold tip of the knife was pressed against his neck. Gu Xingyin stood behind him and whispered in his ear, Take a guess. If I continue like this, will I be able to take your life? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly felt the person in front of her tremble slightly. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. The man suddenly burst into laughter. Fortunately, there weren't many people around, otherwise, they would have attracted a lot of attention. Enoch didn't care about the knife at his neck at all and turned around. You won't kill me, he said with certainty. If she really wanted to take his life, this woman wouldn't waste time talking to him. Gu Xingyin put the knife back at her waist. Since the man saw through her intentions, she couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore. The man was in a very good mood. He said to Gu Xingyin, I'll show you the real fun of Storm Star. These. He glanced at the commercial street not far away with a disdainful expression. They can only be used to coax little girls. Gu Xingyin agreed. Who was Situ Jean? Shopping on the commercial street really didn't suit her. Enoch took Gu Xingyin to a private hover car. Very cool. Gu Xingyin looked up and down and commented. Enoch's smile deepened. Of course, I designed this myself. The two of them chatted casually. Most of the time, it was Enoch talking to himself. Gu Xingyin listened and occasionally made a sound to indicate that he was listening. I'm still a bit confused. Ah, Jean, you actually followed me out so easily. You even allowed me to call you Ah Jean. Enoch didn't say this out loud. Gu Xingyin glanced at him with a hint of a smile in her eyes. Firstly, you are very strong. So strong that even an SSS expert like me is fearful. Secondly, you're very handsome. You fit my taste. The hover car that was traveling at a high speed made a huge drift in the air, scaring the cars behind it. Just as the car owner was about to stick his head out and curse, the car in front of him had already disappeared. Enoch looked at the expressionless woman beside him in disbelief. Was he being flirted with? His gaze was so obvious that Gu Xingyin frowned. Don't show such a stupid look. If Enoch's subordinates were here to hear this, their eyeballs would probably fall out. Their boss looked very kind, but only they knew how scary he could be when he was ruthless. The last person who dared to scold him had long become nourishment for Mother Earth. However, when Enoch heard this, he wasn't angry. Instead, his brows relaxed and he smiled happily. What a coincidence. Ah, Jean, you fit my taste too. Why don't we try it together? He tested him half-jokingly but received an affirmative reply. Okay. The car once again glided in the air in a big arc. Enoch felt that something must be wrong today. He looked at the woman beside him and knew that something was wrong. There was an old saying on Blue Planet, if something is abnormal, it must be a demon. Chapter 4:15. However, even if it was abnormal, Enoch still felt that he had fallen for her. From the first time he saw this woman, he felt that the two of them should belong to each other. No one of the same sex or opposite sex had ever made him feel this way. He suddenly thought of a question and stared at Gu Xingyin with burning eyes. Do you treat every man who meets your standards like this? He did not show it on his face, but his heart was already boiling with murderous intent. If her answer was yes, he would not let any of those men go. Gu Xingyin looked at him strangely. In your eyes, do I, Situ Jean, look like someone who is not picky? Enoch was relieved and looked at her with a smile. No, you have good taste. Otherwise, you wouldn't have fallen for me. Gu Xingyin thought to herself. If it was the real Situ Jean, she really wouldn't have fallen for you. Situ Jin's life goal was to become the first marshal of the empire. As for the relationship between a man and a woman, it was never in her consideration. Enoch brought her to a place. It was a very tall building. With the current construction level, buildings with less than 100 floors were not considered tall. However, the height of this building was one of the highest in the entire Storm Star. Enoch familiarly took out a black crystal card and swiped it into one of the card slots. The door opened automatically, and the two of them went straight to the highest point. Put this on. Enoch took out a strange-looking mask from the space button and handed it to Gu Xingyin. He also put on one for himself. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. Although space technology was quite advanced now and space storage technology had been conquered by technology, it was still too expensive. The space button was still a privilege that only a few people had. However, in the next moment, her attention was attracted by something else. Enoch put on the mask in front of her. In an instant, his aura changed. She could still see him standing there without any obstruction, but the figure in front of her suddenly became blurred. His aura also became somewhat unpredictable. Even someone familiar with him would not be able to recognize him. Gu Xingyin's voice suddenly became serious. This is the latest result of the military's research, an anti-reconnaissance mask. I remember that this technology is forbidden to be leaked. Enoch smiled. My Jean, now is not the time to talk about business. Let's go in. He pushed the door open and Gu Xingyin stepped in. She felt that she had entered another world. This was a huge space. There was a huge square in the middle. There were countless seats around. It seemed to be for people to rest. Whether it was the square or the seats, they were all made of special materials. Everything seemed to be switched between reality and illusion. She could see the traffic below and the people coming and going. Above her head was a clear sky with white clouds. Gu Xingyin saw that there were already many people sitting inside, like herself and Enoch, wearing anti-reconnaissance masks. Enoch seemed to be very famous here. As soon as he came in, many people stood up, but their eyes were not friendly. Here, powerhouses from all over the galaxy have gathered. How can people who come to Storm Star not see this place? Enoch said softly behind her. Chapter 4:16. Gu Xingyin followed Enoch in. Fire, you actually brought someone here today? A man's voice rang out beside them. Enoch nodded. This is my girlfriend. He frowned and was thinking about how to address her. Gu Xingyin said calmly, Gu Xingyin. Enoch looked at her in confusion. As far as he knew, Situ Jean didn't have any relatives or friends with the surname Gu. Also, Enoch felt that the name Gu Xingyin was very familiar. The man who had spoken earlier suddenly became surprised. Girlfriend? Oh my god. Fire, you actually have a girlfriend? Why haven't I heard you mention it before? Enoch smiled and said, yes, I just met her today. The man who had spoken earlier was speechless. The woman you just met today is your girlfriend. He glanced at Gu Xingyin with a strange look in his eyes. Could she have been forced by the fire? He carefully looked at Gu Xingyin, but under the influence of the anti-detection mask, he couldn't see anything other than her figure. He thought for a moment and said, that woman, Huo Hu, will also be here today. You have to be careful, beautiful lady. Gu Xingyin almost instantly got some information from his words. She looked at Enoch with a faint smile and said, Huo Hu, ha. Her voice wasn't as sweet as an ordinary woman's voice. Instead, it was slightly hoarse. With such a high pitch, it was as if there was a small hook in it that made people's hearts itch. Enoch's heart softened when he heard that. He smiled and said, she's not an important person. You know, people as outstanding as your man are always very popular. The man beside them was speechless. She was still so shameless. At this moment, someone from the group of people who had stood up earlier stood up. Fire, we're ready. Didn't you say that you were bringing a partner over? What do you mean by bringing a woman over today? The man's tone was full of malice. He pointed at Gu Xingyin and said, don't tell me this is your partner. His tone was filled with disdain for Gu Xingyin. Humph. Enoch's expression turned cold. The man who spoke seemed to have sensed something. He quickly retracted his hand, but he was still a step too late. The hand that was previously pointing at Gu Xingyin was now dripping with blood. If I hear you speak rudely again, the next time, my target will be. Enoch's voice was cold as he pointed at his neck. That person's expression changed greatly, but he didn't dare to say anything and retreated. Gu Xingyin looked at Enoch questioningly. Enoch understood the meaning she wanted to express and said with a smile, there are a few reckless fellows who have agreed to challenge me today. There were 6 of them. Perhaps they felt that 6 against 1 was too shameless, so they specifically stated that I could bring 1 companion. He emphasized the word 1. Gu Xingyin nodded in understanding. So it's 6 against 2. The customs of the Storm Star are really different from ours. Enoch understood the meaning of her words. A trace of a smile flashed through his eyes. He asked cooperatively, how is it different? Gu Xingyin said lightly, since it's a competition, of course it's 1 against 1. It doesn't matter if you're not strong enough. You have to keep your face. The people on the opposite side listened to them echoing one another. Their hearts were full of shame and anger, but in the end, they didn't dare to say that they were going to challenge Enoch 1 against 1. Chapter 4:17. Gu Xingyin immediately lost interest in this competition. Although she hadn't seen Enoch's strength with her own eyes, he was undoubtedly at the top level if he could make Situ Jean, an SSS rank expert, feel afraid. Those people dared to challenge him, so they were obviously not weak. However, Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes. A martial artist without guts was still lacking something. Enoch clearly felt her change and said with a smile, what's wrong? You're not interested anymore? That won't do. I dragged you here to support me. We still have to fight 2 against 6. Was he asking her to fight? Gu Xingyin looked at Enoch strangely in disbelief. You want me to fight? She asked with an inexplicable expression, can you afford the appearance fee? Enoch's smile didn't change. Of course I can't, so I'll pay with my body. Gu Xingyin. Why is my lover in this world so shameless? Suddenly, the door that had been closed opened again. A fiery red figure walked in. Although her face couldn't be seen, the tight red clothes showed off her voluptuous and seductive figure. Even if one didn't look at her face, one could tell that she was a stunner just by looking at her figure. The woman looked around the field and her gaze landed on Enoch. Then, she walked towards him. "Fire, I heard that you were going to fight with someone today, so I rushed over. I'm not late, am I?" The stunner's voice was especially seductive. When she spoke, it was like the thickest honey emitting a pure and beautiful fragrance, seducing people. Gu Xingyin almost immediately guessed who it was. Sure enough, in the next second, a gloating voice sounded from the other side. "Hua Hu, to think that you're so concerned about me. I brought a girlfriend today." Hua Hu heard this and looked in Gu Xingyin's direction. Although she couldn't see the other party's face, Gu Xingyin could feel her gaze lingering on her. Hua Hu looked at Enoch in disbelief. "Fire? Is this your girlfriend? You have a girlfriend?" Enoch nodded. Although he didn't like Firefox, he didn't hate her either. "As you can see, I'm already taken. Don't waste your time on me." Hearing his words, Hua Hu's voice suddenly became sharp. "Impossible, I don't believe it. This woman has never appeared before. You also said before that you have no interest in sex. You must be annoyed by me and deliberately found someone to lie to me, right?" Gu Xingyin stood at the side and did not say anything. She only looked at Enoch. Her meaning was obvious: you provoked a rotten peach blossom, so you have to deal with it yourself. Enoch's voice was very serious. "Firefox, I remember that the two of us were never close. If you talk like that, my girlfriend will misunderstand." He continued, "You're not important enough for me to find someone to put you off. Don't think too much about it. It is a fact that I have a girlfriend and I like her very much. In order to avoid suspicion, you'd better stay away from me in the future. Otherwise, if you make my girlfriend unhappy, it's hard to say what I'll do." These words could be regarded as heart-wrenching. It turned out that the lovers in this world were not only thick-skinned but also sharp-tongued. Gu Xingyin thought so. The woman called Firefox seemed to be unable to bear Enoch's words. She took several steps back and then looked at Gu Xingyin. "I want to duel with you." Chapter 418. Hua Hu looked at Gu Xingyin next to Enoch and said in a loud voice, "I'll duel with you. If you lose, you should know your place and leave Hua Hu on your own initiative. How about it?" Gu Xingyin didn't expect that Hua Hu would burn her while she was watching the play. Before she could speak, Enoch got angry. "Hua Hu, do you know what you're talking about? I don't like you. This matter has nothing to do with her. Don't drag others into this." Although no one knew Gu Xingyin's strength better than him, Enoch didn't want his woman to suffer any unexpected disaster because of him. He didn't suppress his strength in anger, and a huge pressure rushed straight to Hua Hu. Hua Hu only felt that her body was heavy, and she knew that she had angered the man. At this time, the best thing to do was to retreat. But, she looked at the woman who was standing beside him calmly, and felt a burst of unwillingness in her heart. Hua Hu was a mysterious and powerful man. Since the first time she came to this place, she had never been defeated. She didn't hide her love for him. She pursued him for 3 years and put down all her reservations, but he didn't pity her at all. How could such an unknown woman easily make Hua Hu admit their relationship? She forcibly endured the pressure from the man, but her eyes were fixed on Gu Xingyin. "How about it? Do you dare to duel with me?" Gu Xingyin reached out to stop Enoch's action and walked to Hua Hu. She was taller than the other party, and when she spoke, she bowed her head slightly, naturally with a hint of condescension. "Why should I bet my man with another woman?" She said in a proud tone, "If I win, this man will be mine. Even if I'm just a waste of physique, this man will only be mine." Enoch looked at the arrogant woman with fiery eyes, and his heart was burning. That's it. She would never know that the way she talked was really damn attractive. He was extremely glad that both of them were wearing masks today. No one else could see her like this. Huahu was a little dumbfounded. She thought she was arrogant enough, but she didn't expect that there would be a woman more arrogant than her. She subconsciously looked at the other party, wanting to see his reaction when he heard this. Enoch's reaction was, no reaction at all. However, at this time, there was no reaction, which meant that he had tacitly agreed to this sentence. Gu Xingyin continued, but I can accept your challenge. Of course, for a simple duel, I don't need you to bet anything. In a while, Fire and I will have a battle. You can watch from the side. When the battle is over, you can decide whether or not you want to duel with me. She had her own pride. Since she had been challenged, even if the other party was being unreasonable, she had to accept the challenge. However, even though she knew that she could win, she was not willing to use her man as a wager. This was a kind of trampling on Enoch and the unstable relationship between the two of them. Okay. Huahu replied in a daze. In fact, she already knew that this duel was unnecessary. Whatever he wanted, he would never be able to get it. Gu Xingyin walked back to Enoch and looked at the people who had been left behind for a long time. Everyone, didn't you say that you want to duel? Let's make it quick. Chapter 419. That group of people had been waiting impatiently for a long time. Previously, when they saw Huahu coming, they thought that she would be able to cause some trouble for Fire. Who would have thought that the woman would be so useless? The leader said with a grim smile, Fire, we admit that you are very strong, but your woman is not necessarily so. Since you want to die with a burden, we won't be polite to you. Enoch's lips curled into a smile. Well, let's wait and see. A quarter of an hour later, 6 more figures appeared on the ground. Gu Xingyin looked at them indifferently. Do you want to continue? The leader of the other side looked at Gu Xingyin as if he was looking at a demon. He originally thought that Fire was strong enough. Who would have thought that a woman he casually found would be so strong? The leader's heart was filled with bitterness. How could a woman who could catch the eye of such a powerful and abnormal guy like Fire really be weak? We admit defeat. The leader got up and said to Enoch, I will send someone to deliver the things I promised. These people may have felt that they no longer had the face to stay here, so after saying that, they walked out one by one. Gu Xingyin looked at Huahu again. The woman was standing there silently at the moment, and no one knew what she was thinking. I said that you can wait until I finish the competition before you decide whether the previous agreement still counts. Gu Xingyin looked at her. Huahu smiled sadly, thank you for leaving me some leeway so that I won't be so humiliated. What was the point of competing? Everyone present had seen Gu Xingyin's strength. Huahu was not belittling herself. In her hands, she might not even have the chance to fight back. She shook her head and followed them out. Enoch pulled Gu Xingyin to a seat and sat down. Well, you can tell me now, what is this so-called really fun place for? Gu Xingyin looked at the people coming to the huge square. Enoch began to talk to her slowly. It turned out that this place was a very special place on Storm Star. No one knew who created it. It was special in several ways. Firstly, it was extremely secretive. Only those who had reached A rank and above were qualified to know and enter. Secondly, those who came here were not allowed to reveal their identity, whether it was their own identity or the identity of others. Third, this place can be used to settle all kinds of personal grudges, regardless of life or death. In the interstellar era, the physique of humans had been greatly improved. It was divided into 6 grades, S, A, B, C, D, and E. It was already extremely rare to find an A-class expert, and S-class experts were even rarer. Of course, someone like Situ Jean who had an SSS extreme physique was an existence that was hard to come by in 100 years. Gu Xingyin fell silent as she listened. In fact, there were similar places in the Galaxy Empire. However, they were only similar and couldn't reach this level. At the end of the day, under the rule of the royal family, some things were not so convenient. Storm Star was different. Although there was a behemoth like the Storm Chamber of Commerce, the Storm Chamber of Commerce was not the ruler of the planet. Without a single ruler, it was possible for such a place to exist. Sure enough, Gu Xingyin saw many people walking in and out. Many people even walked out horizontally. The people in this place are not just limited to Storm Star, right? Chapter 420. Enoch was shocked by her sharpness and nodded approvingly. Of course, Storm Star doesn't have so many level A experts. Gu Xingyin snorted. A place that even I don't know about, the concealment measures are indeed good. Enoch laughed. You don't know because you don't like it at all, right? Enoch had only brought her here to broaden her horizons. There was no point in wasting an entire afternoon's date here. Soon, the two of them got up and left. The person who had struck up a conversation with the two of them walked out after seeing this. Seeing him get into the car, Gu Xingyin was a little surprised. She had thought that the two of them only knew each other, but now it seemed that it was not as simple as that. Sure enough, the person took off his mask as soon as he got into the car. He had the same red hair, but his face was different from Enoch's flamboyant handsome face. In comparison, his face could only be considered delicate. The red-haired man greeted Enoch as his elder brother before addressing Gu Xingyin as his sister-in-law with a bright smile. Gu Xingyin contacted the system after seeing the man. I already know Enoch's identity. The person the Empire has been looking for, right? This arrogant system. She did not know why, but when she met Enoch, it actually played mysterious and asked her to guess Enoch's identity herself. Sure enough, after hearing Gu Xingyin's words, the system's reluctant voice sounded. Host, you guessed right. It had wanted to whet the host's curiosity. Enoch also took off the mask on his face and looked at Gu Xingyin helplessly. I wanted to tell him to be careful, but who knew that this kid would move so quickly? Gu Xingyin also took off her mask at the same time. While the red-haired man was stunned, she smiled at Enoch. Should I say, nice to meet you? Red Devil. The #1 space pirate the Empire had been looking for decades, Red Devil. Red Devil had never shown his face, but his brother was his spokesperson outside. Enoch sighed. I didn't expect that after hiding my identity for so many years, I would fall here. But it's no big deal. I was going to tell you anyway. He had a feeling that he would spend the rest of his life with this woman. If that was the case, he would have to tell her his identity sooner or later. At this moment, the red-haired man, who had been in a daze ever since Gu Xingyin took off her mask, finally came back to his senses. Fuck. Aren't you, that Empire's Citogen? The general of the Empire was his brother's woman. It was his sister-in-law. The red-haired man felt that he should close his eyes and sleep a little longer. Enoch looked at his younger brother with some disappointment. What Citogen? Call her sister-in-law. This kid was too useless. The red-haired man came to his senses and deeply felt that his elder brother was indeed his elder brother. He raised his signature Enoch smile and said to Gu Xingyin, Hello, sister-in-law. I'm Huan Chu, Enoch. He pointed at Enoch, my half-brother. So they had different fathers. Gu Xingyin understood why their names were so different. She had been wondering why the two brothers' surnames were different. She nodded reservedly. Hello, Huan Chu. Huan Chu felt that he was still in a dream. He was actually sitting in the same car as the Empire's General Citogen, and he even called her sister-in-law. If Lily knew about this, would he still have to worry about not succeeding in his confession? His beautiful imagination was interrupted by Enoch. Put away your little thoughts. You're not allowed to tell anyone about Ah Jin's identity and my matters. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.